Welcome back to another episode of the Exempt List. We have a lot to talk about this week, especially after we have another coach find with the Carolina Panthers getting rid of Frank Reich after the failed 2023 season experiment. And no better person to break it all down with me than noted Panthers fan, the Ringers, Steven Ruiz. We'll be right back with this week's episode. Steven, how are you doing, man?
Listen, like the key to getting good spots on podcasts is being the fan of a really crappy team that fires its coach all the time and doing quarterback rankings that everyone hates. I think that's why I'm here today.
Precisely why you're here. And just before we start off this podcast, I just want to read something to you. There is a team out there who has this list of quarterback transactions over the past 5 years, I would say. I think 5 years is about right. Yeah. So they spent a third-round pick on Will Grier out of the league. They signed Teddy Bridgewater to $33 million guaranteed. He is the current backup for the Detroit Lions. They cut Cam Newton, traded a second, fourth, and sixth-round pick for Sam Darnold, who's the backup quarterback to Brock Purdy, which we'll get to later. Then they traded Bridgewater for a sixth. They picked up Darnold's $18.9 million option. Then they re-signed Cam Newton. They spent a third on Matt Corral. They traded for Baker Mayfield, cut Baker Mayfield, cut Cam Newton again, drafted Bryce Young over CJ Stroud, and now has fired the original Panther, Frank Reich, the first starting quarterback in Panthers history who became the head coach, has just been fired. When I read all of that to you, how does it make you feel as a dead Panthers fan?
I mean, it doesn't affect me at all. You can't kill what's already dead. I've been dead since that Will Grier pick. You can go back to my tweets after that pick was made, man. That broke me as a fan. I think that was the moment when I became the dead Panthers fan that I am inside. Just listening back to that list, I was trying to pick out which move I thought was the best of them. Like if I could go back, if I had to pick one to do over again out of that list of what was it, 12?
Yeah.
And it was tough. And I think the answer is signing Cam Newton for like that 5-game stretch where it didn't even matter was the best move they've made.
Because you at least got like the dopamine moment of, I'm back.
Yes, you got that gift.
But he wasn't really back. He was just happened to score a touchdown.
We don't need to drag Cam into this misery, man.
We don't, because
he gave us his all.
Right, because Cam at his peak was obviously better than any of these guys combined. But man, like I think my favorite part is the third round picks on Will Grier and Matt Corral. And like you knew as soon as they hit like the preseason, dead on arrival. Like just can't play in the NFL. But I feel like a lot of people knew that before they got drafted too, So the fact that they're spending these picks and they actually traded up to get Matt Corral. It's not that they just spent a third; they traded up to get him in the third. And I'm not even sure if he made it past if he ever logged like a regular season snap for the team. So,
I mean, the quarterbacks they've drafted so far under Tepper are Matt Corral, Will Grier, and Bryce Young.
That's right.
I mean, if any of those three walked into a room, would you be like, I want this guy playing quarterback for my franchise without anything else, like seeing anything else? Matt Corral got beat up by Wayne Gretzky's son. And I know like getting beat up by like a hockey guy isn't embarrassing, but like Wayne Gretzky is not like a hockey guy. He's not the hockey guy. He's like a skinny guy. I don't know, man. There's no way Wayne Gretzky's son can fight.
No, there's no shot. But like, dude, if I didn't know who Bryce Young was, and he walked into like my apartment right now, the starting quarterbacks for the Carolina Panthers, I don't think that would be on my bingo board.
I would call the local middle schools, and I wonder there's a kid that left school. What do you mean? No, that was me. But he hasn't been good.
Yeah, who cares? No, he hasn't been good. It's funny though, because one of my my parents live in Charlotte, and one of my dad's friends, earlier this year, he got somehow he got sideline passes through work to one of the Panthers games. And his takeaway was like watching them on the field, then seeing them warm up and run out the tunnel was like, holy crap, he's so small. Like, how did this end up as the starting quarterback for the Panthers? And I want to ask you, as someone who watches a lot of film on quarterbacks and has intimate knowledge of the Carolina Panthers, how much is Frank Reich to blame for all the problems that happened this season that led to his firing after 11 games?
I mean, he definitely shares some of the blame. I don't think the offense was good by any means, but to me, when I watch it, it just looked like a normal NFL offense. I don't think it was like Matt Canada having one of the worst. Like, what did he go, like 50 games without going over 400 yards? Like, we saw this offense with another quarterback, and it was Andy Dalton, and it looked pretty good. Like, Andy Dalton still has the best quarterback performance of any Panthers quarterback this year, going up against a team that might make the playoffs in Seattle on the road early on in the year before you can even say the Panthers started making adjustments to their scheme. So I think that's the biggest indictment, is that we have seen another quarterback not only play well in this, but kind of thrive in a way, thrive in ways that we've never seen Andy Dalton thrive over the last couple of years. I don't know.
I forgot that he actually, like, even statistically, he put up a pretty good performance, because it wasn't just that, you have a veteran quarterback stepping in and he's going to play better just because he has more reps. I think that was like week 3, but he came in, he had 34 completions on 58 attempts, 361 yards, 2 touchdowns. I know, like, on a per throw basis, it doesn't average out to all that much, 6.2 yards, but dude, I think the Panthers might kill for a 6.2 yards per attempt performance right now with 2 touchdowns, no picks.
Reich would still be the coach if Bryce was putting up numbers like that, if he was averaging 6, which is not a high bar. 6 yards per attempt is not a high bar. But if he was doing that, Reich would obviously, like, that's not even a hot take that he would be the coach. But if Andy Dalton was starting this whole year, I think Reich is still the coach. So that's what it comes down to, is the fact that Bryce is underachieving and, like, putting that all on the coach when he's this historic outlier where, like, if you thought he was a sure thing, like, I get it, like, opinions on quarterbacks are different, but you're objectively wrong at that point. I don't know how you're that confident.
Well, because it's not just the small thing. It's because, like, Kyler Murray's small, but it's without the 4.3 speed, without being able to throw at 70 yards, like, over a mountain. I think average might be, maybe average on, like, the current quarterback scale in terms of athleticism. Because I feel like all these guys can go ahead and scramble for a first down, which is basically all that Bryce is giving you in the running game.
Dude, Andy Dalton inverted V or whatever at TCU. Like, he was an option quarterback at one time. I agree. Like, his athleticism is not, like, was not something to use as a reason for drafting him that high.
Or I would say he's like an above average athlete, but that's for like 15 years ago. For today, like, baseline, you need to be able to scramble for a first down. Like, that's like a baseline trait that you need to have. So it's a little bit worrisome that he can't do much more than that in terms of the ground game. But the one Panthers game I went to this year, when they played the Colts, and he had the 2 pick sixes against for Kenny Moore, where Kenny Moore outscored the Panthers that day, I was like, man, it just looks so hard for him. It looks so hard for him out there. And it's just, look, it's not his fault he got picked number 1 overall. It's a great achievement that someone of his skill set, honestly, was picked number 1 overall. But when you get down to it, like, I don't really know where the edge is supposed to come from. Like, if you're someone who is still a Bryce Young believer, when you look down the road, like, what do you see this developing into?
That was my question. Like, there was the Steph Curry comps before the draft.
CJ was the Steph Curry guy.
And that was my question, though, was like, what is his version of Steph Curry's 3-point shooting? He doesn't have one. Like, Steph Curry's 3-point shooting is Kyler's, I run 4.3 and can throw the ball 70 yards. So it's fine that I'm 5'6" or whatever. Bryce Young, like you said, doesn't have that, man. It's like, and I'm not saying skill wise, I just mean, like, aesthetic wise. It's like they pulled someone from the crowd and let him play quarterback. And there's, like, ways to make things easier on a rookie quarterback. Like, we're seeing that in Houston. CJ Stroud has been amazing, but, like, Houston has done a good job of putting him in a good situation. The play calling's been good and all that. Bobby Sloak is a good offensive coordinator. But some of the easy buttons that we usually give to rookies, like, we can't even give that to Bryce. Like, you can't put him under center and ask him to run an under center play action offense like Jimmy G or something, because he's too small. He, like, disappears beyond the line, and, like, he needs to be able to see the field. So even that is hard. Like, everyone complains about the screen passes that the receivers run all the time.
But he needs those.
That's the only way to do it. That's what you have to do with a player like this in a system like this. So I don't know. And, like, you guys can talk about Frank Reich all you want, but he got a competent season out of Carson Wentz 2 years ago, running a similar offense.
Dude, they got to the playoffs with the corpse of Phillip Rivers. You know, they almost beat the Bills on the road.
I mean, like, everyone's acting like he's, like, a terrible head coach, but he was known as a solid to good head coach in Indianapolis. Those teams were never this bad until this last year when everything fell apart. But I don't know, man. It's rough.
I do kind of wonder if Frank is like cut out for rookie quarterback life. But
That's a good question.
I think he would probably be feeling a little bit better about that if it was CJ Stroud instead of Bryce Young. Because, you can do some veteran quarterback things like right off the bat. But, man, it's just tough. It's tough. I don't really know where they go from here. But Greg Olsen appears to be interested in this job because The Athletic reported last night that Greg Olsen would be interested in taking over the head coaching job of the Panthers. Not the other way around, that the Panthers would be interested in having Greg Olsen as their head coach, but he'll be interested in taking over as a head coach of the Panthers, which, why not, dude? Why not at this point? Because if you're David Tepper, you failed on the rah-rah college guy and Matt Rule. You failed on the proven veteran coach in Frank Reich. Why not get some fanfare in there? The last time you guys were good or relevant, Greg Olsen was on the team to get some positive feelings back in the organization.
Some member berries.
Some member berries.
That's what they got to do,
Remember
right?
Star Wars?
I saw a tweet from like some Panthers fan aggregation account that was like a proposed coaching staff. It was just a bunch of old players. And I'm like, sometimes I wish I could like think like that. Where I think just because a guy was good at like playing tight end that he would make a good tight end coach, as if there's like any overlap there, really. I mean, there is some, but I don't know. It's rough. And I think the most concerning thing about like the coaching search is that it feels like Tepper is really locked into Bryce Young. So, and that's always an awkward thing, right? When you're hiring a coach and you have this quarterback that you're really committed to, and you don't know if the coaching candidates are going to be like, what coaching candidates are you going to get that are going to be interested in not only working for David Tepper, who seems to be a guy that just will fire a coach on a whim, but you have to take this quarterback prospect that like some people were probably out on. I'm sure there were teams in the league that were like, I'm not drafting this guy. He's 5'8". I don't know. Like, that's going to make things complicated. And I think it's going to kind of tarnish the coaching search. And I think finding the right coach is the key to turning this around. The only way to turn this around is to find the right coach and the right GM who can like kind of tell Tepper to just back off. And I think that's what happened in San Francisco. Like, we were talking about Jed York, like he was one of the worst owners of all time after the balky hardball fiasco. He finds Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, and then I haven't heard Jed York in the news since then. I don't know if you have, but I haven't heard his name since then. And I think that's the key.
I haven't at all.
But I think Tepper wants credit. Tepper wants credit, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I feel like Kyle is just Kyle Shanahan's the guy that'll be like, yo, you need to back the hell away from what I got going on over here. Because he's crazy as hell too. So maybe you can find someone like that, because look, Tepper's gonna be a medal owner. And here's the fact, like, I got some flack for tweeting this yesterday, where I was like, dude, if the Panthers still had their own pick, I would say pick Caleb Williams or Drake May. Like, I would say just start over. But they don't have that. Take? It was yesterday. I kind of got slammed for it by a couple people. I was like, dude, if you have the first pick, why not take Caleb Williams and Drake May? And someone was like, well, there's still a path for Bryce to become like the 20th best quarterback in the league. So like I'm saying, if you have the first pick again, take Caleb Williams or Drake May.
Hey, they're right about one thing. There is a path for him becoming a top 20 quarterback. The XFL and USFL just merged, and there's a super league, so there might be 20 teams in that league. But I don't like. What are you latching onto as a Panthers fan? Like, I watch the games, and there really isn't. This isn't a Trevor situation. I think Trevor is going to be the point of comparison in the offseason when they hire a new coach, which also requires you
got
to
a Jared Goff comp yesterday too.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. Everyone's like, "Oh, what happened with Jared Goff?" Yeah, the Rams found one of the greatest offensive minds of all time, Hall of Fame left tackle. They signed Robert Woods. They traded for Sammy Watkins. They drafted Cooper Kupp. Yeah, just do that.
Todd Gurley was at his peak.
Todd Gurley was at his peak. Just do that, and then you'll get a quarterback that you want to trade anyway in 3 years. Just do that. Like, what are you talking about? And then, like, the Trevor Lawrence thing, my original point, like, when you watch Trevor Lawrence on film during that Urban Meyer season, you could still see it. Like, you still saw the pocket stuff. You still saw the talent. With Bryce Young, you just don't see it. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say other than you don't see it. Like, there's nothing on tape. This is Will Grier tape. This is the type of tape I would expect if they were still playing Matt Corral. I don't know what else you say.
It's well, and then I think there's also like one of the interesting parts to me is just the way people will mentally latch on to something because it was perceived as good by somebody else. Like, okay, well, Bryce Young was taken number 1 overall. He must have something to him. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't bet on that based on what I've seen so far. But guess what, Carolina? You don't have your first round pick for this year. So you're locked into another year for this. And David Tepper and Nicole Tepper, they're going to do whatever they can to try and make this thing go. So I am already penciling in T. Higgins into the Carolina Panthers starting lineup because it's an easy sell. Hey, T, we'll clear out some cap space. You get to come back home. You got an exciting young new quarterback to play with, and then he gets here, and it's like, what the
like, actually, you're playing quarterback, buddy.
You're gonna have 50 attempts in the season. We're just gonna run trick plays, T. So work on that arm.
I'm all for it though. I'm all for it because when they get T. Higgins, they could trade him away for the next time they draft a quarterback. First of all, like they did DJ Moore.
Hey, I have a very lightly used Taylor Heineke that you can have as your backup quarterback next year, who might be able to take over as a starter. But if you had to pick a new head coach for the Panthers today, who would you be leaning towards? They almost hired Ben Johnson last year.
I think like Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald would be the two guys. But like, since I want a guy that could definitely stand up to David Tepper, like, I'm just going to say it, like Jim Harbaugh, bring Jim Harbaugh in.
Oh my God.
That's what they've
that's what they need,
me down
dude.
to. But that's what they've broken me down to, is that I'm clamoring for Jim. I yearn for Jim Harbaugh right now.
Hey, Jim Harbaugh's never failed at any stop he's been to.
That's a good point.
He's never failed. San Diego, Stanford, San Francisco, Michigan. He's built up all those teams into something that can compete for a title.
He turned Josh Johnson into like a longtime NFL starter.
Dude, Josh Johnson, his last year is with Harbaugh in San Diego, 43 touchdowns, 1 interception. Maybe that could be Bryce Young.
Who do you think gets a start later on? Like, who do you think gets the last start? Josh Johnson or Bryce Young in the NFL?
Oh, Josh Johnson for sure. Yeah. You know, Josh Johnson will never die. I still have the podcast idea where we randomly bring Josh Johnson in and we pull something out of a hat. Say, okay, Josh, give me your worst memory of the 2015 Bengals offseason. And then he gets 2 minutes and we just kick him out the show. And every week he just comes in and just gives off some of the worst memories of his career for all the 20 stops that he had. I'm just good. Josh, if you listen to this podcast, holler at me. Come on. You know it's funny.
Don't give away that idea for free, man. You got to copyright that or something. That's a good idea.
I'm black. They'll take it from me anyways.
I'm going to take it. I'm going to use it on my podcast and give you no credit. Be the Elvis of podcasting.
All right, let's move on for the Panthers. I think one of the most exciting things this weekend, or one of the most frustrating things, is Josh Allen playing like an MVP candidate and people pretending like he's having like a terrible season or something. It's very, very odd to me. You know, coming off of that game on Sunday where they lost to the Eagles and a heartbreaker, I just tweeted out, Josh, it's not your fault, bud. And people were like, oh, yes, it is. It is his fault because he missed the Gabe Davis on the end zone on the last throw of the game. It's like, okay, like you can debate that all you want, like that one specific throw, but you're not going to tell me that everything you watched up to that point even doesn't show like an exceptionally talented quarterback doing everything he can to drag his team to the finish line. I hate the way we ended up talking about Josh Allen. And I say this as someone who thought he sucked coming into the league. Like he is easily one of the elite quarterbacks. And I would say even at 6-6, it's looking slim, but like you have a chance to still make the playoffs as long as Josh Allen's going to play like this. And the fact that like people can't even recognize how good he is, it's very frustrating to me.
There are some broken brains out there. I can't blame people because this is what the media has done to us over the last 20 years. I don't know when this started. When did this start? Like even the MVP discussion in general I think has changed over my lifetime. I remember like when I was young growing up and the Brady and Manning debates were kind of happening. Like the thing with Manning was he was winning the MVPs. Brady was winning the games. Manning was winning the MVPs. And MVPs were kind of looked at like the loser thing. Like, oh, who cares? The individual accomplished whatever. And like, I think that discussion, that debate kind of changed the way we look at the award. So now we're at the point where you can watch a performance like on Sunday, like watching Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen go at it. Like it was very clear they were playing two different sports, basically. Like, and that's not to take away from Jalen Hurts. I think he executes the system well, but that was a team beating one player. It was basically that Jon Snow? I never watched Game of Thrones. That Jon Snow gif where he's like pulling out the sword and like the army's coming. That's basically what it was. And somehow after that game, like Jalen Hurts' MVP stock went up and Josh Allen's went down because of the final score. Because like a kicker made a 60-yard field goal in driving rain. And Gabe Davis and Josh Allen had a miscommunication on a route. Like that's the only reason. And that changes everything. Like that changed not just like the MVP race, that changes how we think about these quarterbacks. I'm sure there were a bunch of tweets from a bunch of like reputable people saying, this is why I take Jalen Hurts over Josh Allen. This is why I do it 5 times out of 5 and twice on Sunday. Like, do we watch these games? Like, I don't know. Just no critical thinking when it comes to this. That performance by Josh Allen was maybe a top 5 performance this year.
No, seriously. And I think when you include the scrambles too, like he has some huge scrambles for first downs. Oh man, like he was out of his mind. Like
he was pump faking like 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, and he did it multiple times. Like he had to do it multiple times during the game, and it worked every time. It was everything you want a modern quarterback to be. Like we talked about what a modern quarterback looks like in the last segment, and like the bare minimums. Like that's why I wouldn't draft guys like Bryce Young, because I have to watch guys like that every Sunday. And if I don't have a guy like that, like what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to build the Eagles? Like I'm supposed to build the best offensive line ever and get Devontae Smith and AJ Brown and a killer pass rush? Like that was the game that broke. That was another game that broke me this season. I can't do this MVP discourse anymore after this week, man.
Well, you have to remember the golden rule. The last thing I saw is the best thing I saw. And the last thing I saw was Jalen Hurts running to the end zone to win the game in overtime after throwing that pass to Olamide Zaccheaus, who never did anything that cool during his time with the Falcons. It's very frustrating because then I feel like I'm on Jalen Hurts. Right. Which is not something that I want to do. Because I think he's absolutely fine and perfectly capable within what they asked him to do. And obviously it's worked out a lot. Like they don't lose. Like they win almost every game. They're scoring 30 plus points a game. It's going great for them with Jalen Hurts over there. But I think you should be able to acknowledge that Josh Allen played a better game. He just didn't win. And that's fine.
I don't know when did it become the point where like complimenting a quarterback and complimenting a team became two separate things? Because it does feel like two separate things. Like you could talk about the Eagles. I can say the Eagles, oh my God, I can't believe the Eagles won with Jalen Hurts. Like, what did he turn it over twice? I can't believe the Eagles, they're such a complete team. This is so great. Their pass rush is so good. Their line is so good. Their coaching staff found answers. Like, this is an amazing team. And like, if you tweet that out, you'll get, why do you hate the Eagles? Like, why do you hate Jalen? And like, what? Like 95 for what it said of what I just said was praising him.
Dude, at the Super Bowl this year, I just tweeted something. I was like, holy crap, like watching Patrick Mahomes in person is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Some Eagles fan, well, what about the game that Jalen Hurts is having? I was like, this tweet's about Patrick Mahomes. This tweet's about Patrick Mahomes. I don't know what you want me to say. Obviously, Jalen had a good game in the Super Bowl, but this tweet is about Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, it's annoying. It's annoying discourse. And another quarterback, maybe two quarterbacks who have annoying discourse, but one whose discourse has gotten even more annoying to me. The Chargers and the Ravens played this weekend. The Ravens won, sent the Chargers hurtling to 4-7, where they have the same amount of wins as the Chicago Bears, Washington Commanders, New York Giants, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, New York Jets, and Tennessee Titans. People seem to think Justin Herbert's like actually not a good quarterback too, because his team keeps losing. And that just blows my mind. Like when I go back and I watch these games on the Sunday or the Monday or Tuesday after, what the hell are we doing here? Well, see, here's the problem. No one's watching as much football as they claim they are.
That's a good point. Like we don't even do it. Like I don't even watch as much football as I claim I do. But I do think that's a problem. And I think that the other problem is like I can on all these like hot take guys all I want, but like they wake up on Monday and they have to have a take. Like we've all been there. Like we've been there.
Yes.
And it's tough. And when you're not, it's not like they're grinding. Like Stephen A. Smith has to watch like 100 sports. He has to have a take on like 100 sports. So if Stephen A. Smith comes on Monday, it's like Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, they're not winners and I don't trust them. And I'd rather have like Tim Tebow or something. I'd rather have Brock Purdy because he comes up through in the clutch. Then fine, like it's Stephen A. Smith and he needed to take. I take issue more so with like the guys that, like you said, that are claiming to watch these games and watch the film and still come away with these conclusions that are just like, with Herbert, it takes another level of delusion. The criticisms he gets are just not rooted in reality. Like he's turnover prone. He's like one of the best ever at avoiding turnovers. It's the same with Dak, which was insane to me. At least Dak led the NFL in interceptions. Like Herbert has never done anything close to that. He just threw 2 interceptions against the Texans once.
Even the Dak interception stuff it blew my mind because in real time, we were all watching these games because there's so many Cowboys games that are on national TV. In real time, we were like, wow, man, Dak is really unlucky. Like there's been a lot of interceptions that have been dropped by his teammates or someone's running the wrong route and there's miscommunication. Wow, it's really unlucky. Then the season ends. And about like March, wow, Dak Prescott threw so many interceptions last year. It's like, whoa. We were just in agreement while we were watching this that this is something that's kind of like an outlier performance for him. That a lot of this wasn't his fault. And then we forget about it immediately when the season's over and say, oh, he led the league in picks last year.
That reminds me of the Herbert Tua Sunday night game last year, where like Herbert just put on a masterclass and everyone was like, holy, I can't believe he's doing this. Like he's like, everything is perfect. And they only scored like 20 points and his stat line at the end of the game was like it wasn't good or it wasn't impressive. But everyone forgets when they were watching the game and they're like, holy, how is he doing this? And I think that's like something we can apply to a lot of the quarterbacks, a lot of the elite quarterbacks this year who have been saddled with these bad teams, like Patrick Mahomes. It's not like Patrick Mahomes is playing worse than he did last year. I think Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback now than he was at this time last year. But everything around him is worse, so the production is worse, so we're not like praising him every week. And I think that's what happens with these quarterbacks is it's so easy to forget, like you said. Another example is like Justin Herbert threw a pick at the end of the half, like it was just a Hail Mary situation. I guarantee you in like a week, someone's going to be like, he threw a pick against the Ravens, like he turned it over against them. And that's why, like, that's what we do. We just forget about the context. And it's easier to do with these quarterbacks who are put in these situations where, you're almost certainly going to have bad stats. Like Josh Allen, the way they play football and the way they've kind of centered the offense around him, he's going to turn the ball over. I think Darius Slay had one of the better post-game quotes that I've read all year after the Bills game, where he was kind of defending Josh Allen. I don't know if you saw this, but he was like, oh my, like he was doing everything he could. And like, he's throwing the ball 50 times a game. Like when you throw the ball 50 times a game, you're going to turn the ball over. Like, I don't understand any of this criticism. He like went out of his way to say this. And he's like, when you're throwing the ball 20 times, like you're not going to have these mistakes and your numbers are going to look better. It's kind of ironic he said that when his quarterback threw the ball 23 times in the game, but that's besides the point. These quarterbacks could do what the Aaron Rodgers thing, where they just throw the ball away or take sacks and don't want to throw interceptions to keep their stat line good, or the Derek Carr thing, I think is a better example. I'd rather have a quarterback who's willing to throw the ball downfield on 3rd and 20 when they're down by 14 points in the fourth quarter. Yes, it's going to spike your interception numbers like it did with Dak, but like you're giving your team a chance to win.
One thing that I keep coming back to this year, as far as like Josh's stats are concerned, is he is leading the league in interceptions this year. That's definitely something that you can point to. And I'm sure if you ask Josh, he would not like to be throwing as many interceptions as he does. But even with the interceptions and the mistakes and some of the other fumbles, he's still 3rd in the league in EPA per play. And he has a massive, like in terms of the amount of plays he's running, he's the only player this year who has run more plays than him on rbsdm.com is Sam Howell, who we'll get to in a little bit. But like to have that level of efficiency, 3rd in EPA per play, 2nd in success rate, and you're still throwing leading the league in interceptions, maybe that tells us something about interceptions that we didn't know before. Maybe that's the data point where, Ben Solak did a great piece about, interceptions are not really as dastardly as we think they are. And I think that this Josh Allen season is proof, if you're willing to just think about it a little bit more than the counting stats that you see and what people are barfing at you on the talk shows every morning. Just think about it for a second. If someone is leading the league in interceptions, but their offense still has no problem cruising down the field, they have some problems in the red zone. I think most of that is just personnel based. You kind of got to reload this offseason if you're Buffalo. But it speaks so much to what we think we know about these turnovers that someone like Josh could have a perceived down year and still be producing like a top 3 quarterback in the league based on most, more advanced analytics that you see.
The crazy thing is, like, when you look back at some of the stat lines of like the old quarterbacks who are really good, like they were just throwing picks out the ass. Like Brett Favre has a bunch of seasons where he has more picks than interceptions. And like, this is when we thought he was good. So somewhere along the line, we're losing receipt. I
think this is actually Aaron Rodgers' fault.
It is. I agree.
Yeah. But then, Aaron was, especially at his peak, it was the blend of like, yeah, I'm not going to throw picks, but it's okay because at some point I'm going to throw a dagger and kill you and die. It's not like the Derek Carr stuff. It's like, I don't want to throw a pick. I'm scared, but I'm also not going to push to push it next week either because dude, like when Derek threw that pick 6 on Sunday against the Saints, after that it all got bad for them. Like he turned scared. He's like trying to loft balls in there, maybe to throw a little more touch on it. It can't be that. Like you would much rather have your quarterback just trying to make plays and move down the field and what have you. And then if mistakes come with it, that's fine because I know he's going to give us a chance on the next drive.
I could be wrong about the play because I didn't rewatch it, but it seemed like Jesse Bates kind of like went outside of his assignment to pick that off. And I just know for a quarterback, if that is what happened, I just know for a quarterback like Derek Carr, that just broke him mentally. He's like, he's not supposed to do that. He's not allowed to do that. And it just rocked his world.
How did he know I was going to throw that slant?
It was just like an inception moment for him. Like Jesse Bates just was spinning the top and it just Derek Carr's world just came crashing down after that. Yeah.
Any other takeaways before we get into your vaunted quarterback rankings? Any Chargers Ravens takeaways?
No. Mike McDonald's the best defensive coach in the NFL. Lamar Jackson should be MVP also. I don't care what the numbers say. He's MVP. I have eyes.
Another Herbert thing before we move on. It was crazy. Like after that game was over, people were debating what Herbert should have done on the final 4th down play where Arthur Millette came running free. I'm like, dude, it's way cooler that a defensive coordinator got a free rusher on a gotta have it 4th down than the fact that Herbert didn't, or the Chargers didn't convert there. I don't really even know what you people want anymore.
And I think, I don't know, I could be wrong again, but I think it was one of those like Belichick Saban type pressures where you're reading the center. So no matter which way like the protection turned, they were going to get a free rusher. It was just a great play call. Like you said, let's celebrate the defensive play caller sometimes.
Yeah. They had, I think they had Michael Pierce dropping the coverage and then Arthur Millette came free. And look, you ended the game. That's what you're supposed to do. It's like you guys don't like football. You just like talking about quarterbacks. Speaking of that, this is the Exempt List where we contradict ourselves every other word, but you still listen. You still tune in. So Steven does quarterback rankings for The Ringer every week. I feel like they have added more stress to your life, or more annoyance at least, than any list of names should ever do. And this is a weird year for quarterback play. So I know we just said we were going to stop talking about Herbert and move on, but actually we're going to go back to Herbert because I think it's a good spot for quarterback rankings talk. So Herbert, he's been your number 2 for most of the season, right?
No, actually he dropped to like 3, 4, and then he just got there he started there, dropped, and he just returned last week. Okay.
So what makes you feel confident in him being number 2, even though that this season has not gone anywhere that the Chargers would like, and their offensive efficiency hasn't been as strong as in recent years either?
Oh, like one thing I always have to explain when people complain about the rankings is that like it's based on a formula that I came up with, and like the formula isn't perfect, but that's the reason why some guys take longer to like jump up the rankings or fall down the rankings, because it is based on skills, and like a quarterback skill set doesn't change that much week to week. It doesn't change that much year to year, honestly. But like that's what it's based on. And when you look at Justin Herbert's game, like I can't find the fault. That's the thing. Like when you hear the criticism about him, it's usually like these things that, like I said earlier, aren't rooted in reality. It's like that he's turnover prone, which is ridiculous. He's not turnover prone. He's like I said, he's one of the best. So when I grade his decision making, I have to give him a high grade, because when you watch him, he's usually making the right decision. When he throws the ball, he rarely misses. He puts the ball on the money. he has the best arm. Like, I don't think anyone's debating his arm strength. Like, that's usually the thing people say when they criticize him. It's like, oh yeah, he's got the big arm, but he doesn't do anything else. His timing, like, he avoids sacks at a historic rate too. His timing and his pocket presence, the way he avoids pressure, his creativity. I think that was a legitimate criticism of him in the past. Him checking the ball down too much, not scrambling enough, not making big plays. But this year, if you've been watching, like, he scrambles a bunch. I think he set a career high last week in scrambles. And I think he's gotten more aggressive as the season has gone on. So, like, these are the categories I'm grading him on: timing, accuracy, arm talent, pocket presence, decision-making, creativity. Which one of those categories am I supposed to dock him for? Because the Chargers lose games and can't close out games. Like, if I had a clutch factor, even that I don't think is a legitimate claim against him, because he's like one of the league leaders in game-winning drives. But I can't, I'm not going to include that in these rankings. And I think that's the reason why. Like, a lot of rankings are based on just vibes, which is fine. Like, it's a good way to do it. Like, Derek Klassen, our friend, does it. He doesn't do it based on a grading system. And I think his rankings, I think they're just as good as mine, if not better. I think his opinion is just as valuable as mine. And he comes to a lot of the same conclusions. So that's probably why I respect his opinion more so than like some other guys. But I don't know. It's just not a vibes-based ranking. Like, I'm not going to have Jalen Hurts ranked number one just because the Eagles are winning. And I see a lot of the quarterback rankings I do see around the internet have Jalen Hurts at number one. And like, that just doesn't compute in my brain.
It doesn't make sense. I just pulled up the all-time interception percentage leaders. And I know it's not, this is not like a total reflective of how good you are playing quarterback, but the turnover prone stuff is funny because he's tied for the fourth lowest interception percentage in NFL history. 1, Aaron Rodgers. 2, Jacoby Brissett. 3, Tyrod Taylor. And then Mahomes and Herbert are tied at fourth with 1.7% of their passes in their career being intercepted. So I don't really know where the turnover prone stuff.
I don't know either, man. And if you look at the game-winning drives, you're going to have the same conclusion. And that doesn't even count all the game-winning drives that he could have had if the defense just like got to stop. Like, he's had so many where he drives them down, goes ahead, the defense gives up a score. He's like put in like an impossible situation. It's fourth down and he's free rusher in his face. And they're like, oh, not clutch. Forget about like that 30-yard laser he threw with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter on fourth down. That wasn't clutch. That wasn't a clutch play.
So much of this is just forgetting what happens too. Cause like you go back to the, even the Packers game this year where Quentin Johnson drops a perfect dime in his hands that not only would have set up a field goal, but like if you were fast enough, you could probably score a touchdown on that play. Just straight up dropped it. But when we get to January and February, Herbert lost to the Packers and they were rebuilding this year. And then that's how it goes. That's how the cycle continues. As long as you prepare yourself for it.
Okay, 2 years ago, week 18, they're down to the Raiders. I think they're down 7 with like 3 seconds left on the clock. They're at the 25-yard line. This guy throws a walk-off. It's not a walk-off, I guess. It forces overtime, but a buzzer-beating 25-yard touchdown with pressure in his face with the season on the line. And he had completed like 3 fourth-down passes on that drive. And somehow that is held up. That loss is held up as an example of him not being clutch. Like, that's one of the greatest. If they go on to win that game, that's like a play that we replay every week 18. But the Raiders obviously win the game, so he doesn't get credit for it. But that's one of the clutchest plays we've seen of the last 4 years.
The Chargers lost, so
right. I don't know. When's the last time you remember like a walk-off buzzer-beating touchdown from that far off? I don't. Like, those don't happen in the NFL. Those happen in movies.
Yeah, so, or Saturday in Alabama.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a rookie, because I think we've done much Herbert talk. We talked about Bryce Young, but where do you have CJ Stroud ranked among NFL quarterbacks right now?
My rankings are all messed up because I have all these like bits in there. Like, I have Tom Brady's in there, and like people get really mad about it. I was against Tom Brady being in the rankings until I saw
Tom Brady's good.
It wasn't even my idea. It was like my editor's idea, but it's funny that people get upset about that.
Caleb Williams and Drake May in there was good too.
I have him like 15th, I think. He's right behind like Jared Goff, which that's going to change really soon. And I know like that's another thing is people will look at that ranking, and I think we're getting close to a point where people are going to say that I'm like a CJ Stroud hater because I have him so low. But I think being a top 14 quarterback as a rookie in the Houston Texans system, like, I think that's very impressive. And I think, like, I don't know any other rookie that I would rank that highly. He's legit. no questions about him. You watch the film, you look at the stats, you break down the stats, you like look at every split to see if he's like kind of pressing easy buttons and inflating his stats like that. And there's nothing. Like everything passes the sniff test with him. There's nothing you could say about it. Like he's Dak 2.0. He's supercharged Dak is how I would put it.
Dude, the Texans run game is not good either.
It's bad. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like he's getting a whole bunch of support. I know that, Devin Singletary, he had a pretty good game on Sunday against Jacksonville, but for the whole of their season, like he's doing this with like a bottom 6 to 8 rushing offense, which is, usually when we talk about the memes of what makes a successful rookie quarterback, you need a good rushing offense to bolster this guys. And obviously it can never hurt to have, a dominant running back in the backfield or even just a plain old good one. But the fact that like most of the offensive production for the Texans, it comes on the back of CJ Stroud. And, I think even the fact that him being so good has allowed like even Tank Dell to hit the fast track on his developmental path because he's just putting it in spots where, Tank, where like CJ's so accurate that it doesn't matter that Tank is like 5'8", because he can just put it right on him, and then that can allow Tank to do what he does best, be an explosive athlete with the ball in his hands or, making plays down the field instead of having to worry about, well, how am I going to scheme up targets for Tank Dell where he can catch it in stride? Well, we'll just get one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league and we'll do it that way.
How many passing yards do you think Bryce Young, or receiving yards do you think Bryce Young would have if CJ Stroud was thrown to him? Maybe he could turn him into like a Wes Welker type. I don't know.
Yeah, Danny Amendola.
But I think Stroud is like another useful example for like how we kind of evaluate quarterbacks and how we kind of update our evaluations. I think the most impressive thing about Stroud isn't that the fact that he's just lighting up the league. I think it's that he's doing it in ways that a lot of draft people, include like we all had questions about his ability to create. And he answered those questions right away. Week 1 against the Ravens, when Mike McDonald was doing the same he did to the Chargers, getting free rushers all over the place. And I thought like that from that game on, I was like, all right, no more questions about CJ Stroud. If he can handle that and could still be viable, it wasn't like he blew up the Ravens, but he was viable and he never looked in over his head. And then it gets sharper every week. This past game against the Jaguars, it's like the Jaguars called a hell of a game on defense. They were getting, and their pass rush played really well. And you saw Stroud have to like go beyond his first read a lot and have to get out of structure. And I don't know about you watching the game, but I felt like he was never out of control of the situation. He always seemed calm. He never really like made terrible decisions. He's a rookie, so he's going to make bad decisions. Yeah, I think he's a top 15 quarterback already, and that's saying a lot for a guy that has only played 12 games. It's insane what he's doing. Like I put his rookie year in the same breath that I put Dak's rookie year, in the same breath that I put Herbert's rookie year. I think it's better than RG3's rookie year, honestly, because that was totally different.
Yeah, it's really crazy because I think when you go back to his college stuff, there was only one game where he had to really break it out like that, and that was against Georgia. Because I remember, dude, there were a bunch of plays in that Georgia game where Jalen Carter like just destroyed the Ohio State offensive line, and then Stroud would just go boop, just to the side or spin around, make someone miss, and then even after they lost Marvin Harrison in that game, like he was still like a huge force for them getting down the field. So it definitely makes you change like what you think about quarterback evaluation, because also like if you're just going to be realistic about where Ohio State is as a program, you don't need CJ Stroud to, to put on like his greatest Houdini act every week, because you're not playing anyone that's even close up, like even close to your standards most weeks. So like I get their concerns. Like I think it was a Northwestern game that they had like in the snow where people were a little turned off, including me. But then when you have the Georgia game, it's like, well, who are you? And it turns out he's the Georgia game quarterback like every single week, which not only like I'm just glad that the Texans draft strategy this year worked out in their favor, where people are like, oh, how could you trade up for, CJ Stroud, or how could you draft CJ Stroud and then also trade up for Will Anderson? Well, looks like they have like an MVP quarterback, like MVP caliber quarterback for the next 10, 15 years. And Will Anderson's already one of the best pass rushers in the league. So maybe just adding blue chip guys to your roster is actually a good thing instead of just hoarding draft picks and cap space.
You know how I said earlier, like Stephen A. Smith, he wakes up on Monday, he's got to have a take. I kind of had that situation after the Texans draft where I kind of lucked into the right take where I was like, I haven't been thinking about this. And it was like midnight and I'm recording a pod after the first round. I'm like, oh, maybe it's a good thing. Like they got a quarterback, they got a pass rusher. Like who cares if CJ Stroud works? Like it's going to be a good trade. And like 10 months later, I looked like a genius, but it was really just me being like, hey, I just need a take.
Well, I see. That's also one of those things where I'll probably get into more like later in the draft season, but just kind of looking ahead to seeing what else is out there, not only just like in your draft year, but beyond. Because I will say, grabbing Will Anderson last year looks like an absolutely genius move this year when you look at the pass rushers that are coming out of the college football and the drafts, and taking CJ Stroud where they did too. Outside of Drake May and Caleb Williams, that college football, like as far as what they're producing from draft prospects at quarterback, looking like a little bit of a wasteland right now.
I have a question for you. Caleb Williams or CJ Stroud? And you could throw Drake May in there. Which one would you take?
Are we talking about prospects or like what we know about them today?
What we know about all of them right now.
Oh, Stroud for sure.
Yeah, I don't even think. Go back to like October then. Like we haven't seen Stroud do this like latest breakout where I think he's taken another step, but like October Stroud, I still think I'm taking him over Caleb. I think Drake May is a little more of a sure thing. Caleb is just like, it's either he's really going to be good or he's really going to be bad.
Yeah, see, that's Caleb's the kind of quarterback that like I've grown to fall for, where it's just like, dude, you can do so many damn cool things. If we can just get you to stop doing the dumb things.
I'm falling for it, man. I already know, man. Our buddy Nate Tice is on the Drake May QB1 train, and I think
they're both good. I think
they're both good too, but I don't know, man. I watch Caleb just does cool things. Like Drake May's a better quarterback right now, but Caleb just does cool shit, man. I would draft it. I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for it.
I think there was I think it was against Washington where Caleb's trying because Caleb's one of those guys who actually kind of played with no help in college, so we can get a grasp a little bit of like the pitfalls and the benefits of him having to just like foot on the gas 100% of the time. But there's a play in the Washington game like where he's taking a long time in the pocket and he rolls out like towards the right sideline, and all of a sudden like he sees out of his left eye there's a receiver like in the front corner, like the front left corner of the end zone. And he just turns left and just 50 yards across the field, right on the line, touchdown. I was like,
in an instant too, like the throw, and I remember that play and like computing in his mind like where he had to place the ball, the leverage of the receiver, like where, like how to throw it. That was, to me, that was like, yeah, I get the processing concerns because he's not asked to process and I don't think he's doing NFL processing, but like that stuff is processing that's going to play at the NFL level. And that's why I'm like, just give me the big arm boy. Like just give him to me, man.
Yeah, you can cry in your mama's arms, but you can throw a ball like that. That's how I feel about that.
I don't care.
Maybe a quarterback who doesn't quite have the physical gifts of that, but is also producing and has gotten you a lot of flack on Twitter. Your Brock Purdy take and 49ers Twitter. Would you like to apologize to those people?
No. And not just Twitter, like old media. I got interviewed by the San Francisco Chronicle about this. Do you know how insane that was? I was like, what? The thing I don't understand is like quarterback rankings are inherently subjective.
Yes.
Like it's my opinion. It's like what I value in quarterbacks. Like, why are you so upset that he's that low? But like my explanation is that we just embellish the things that he is good at and the things that are helping him succeed. Like he is an accurate quarterback based on like league average baselines, but he's not more accurate than Dak Prescott. He doesn't like make decisions better than Geno Smith. Like who are the quarterbacks that are ahead of him? I don't think he has a better arm than Jared Goff. Like he's not capable of making some of the throws Jared Goff makes. Like those are the guys that they want me to put him over. They want me to put him in the top 10. They want me to put him in the top 5. And just looking at the skill set, which again, that's what these rankings are based on, are on skill sets. Like if I had to pick a quarterback and drop him into an average offense, all things equal, who would I want to play tomorrow for me? That's what the rankings are based on. And I like Brock Purdy is perfect for this Kyle. I don't want to say perfect because like really the perfect quarterback for the Shanahan system is Mahomes. Like that's the answer for every offense. But like
or anyone who can breathe at this point,
he fits perfectly into it. Like he's a good cog. I'm not discounting that, but like put him in the Bryce Young offense. And it doesn't look like this. I think it looks better because I think he's a better quarterback, but it doesn't look anything like this. And I think we have a different perception of what his skill set is. I think we're more focused on the creation and the playmaking and stuff like that, and not like, oh, the anticipation and accuracy. And then you go to the other Shanahan quarterbacks, and what did you say about them? Oh, they had anticipation and accuracy, and Tua Tagovailoa, and like he like maybe doesn't have the big arm, but why do all the Shanahan quarterbacks end up having anticipation and accuracy? Maybe it's the system that makes them look like it. Maybe if you know that if I throw this in-breaker, that it's going to be wide open no matter what, like I can throw with anticipation. If I'm throwing to Quentin Johnson on an in-breaker and I have Joe Lombardi drawing up the plays, am I throwing with anticipation then? You'd be an idiot to throw with anticipation because you're probably going to throw a lot of picks. And I think that's part of the reason why when these guys throw picks, when like Tua and Brock Purdy throw picks, it's like the funniest interception you've ever seen. It's like, that was a terrible throw. What were they looking at? It's just like, that's the system. You're going to have those picks, and you're also going to get some of those other plays that look like highlights. Tua actually said that last week. He's like, in this system, you're going to throw interceptions. You just have to. And if you're not throwing interceptions, you're probably not operating the system the right way. But that goes both ways. Like, he looks better in accuracy and anticipation because of the system. And then we embellish those things. And then people do the thing like, well, what's important quarterback? And it's accuracy and like making the right decisions, as if like Patrick Mahomes isn't doing it on a completely different level than Purdy is.
Yeah.
Like guys like that.
Yeah. It's like, it's tough to argue against sometimes because like you look at Brock's stat lines and they're outrageous. Like they're outrageous, dude. Because he had the stretch of 2 weeks where, or maybe it was the past 3 games, but I know it was at least the Buccaneers game and the Jaguars game. If you switched all the numbers from those 2 games together, he comes out with a passer rating of like 157.1. You know, so like one of the things that I struggle with is going back to someone else and saying, this guy that's, you know, putting up a perfect passer rating every week, he's just kind of like, okay.
I know. We feel like the crazy people, right? Like this is the other end of the Herbert like turnover percentage debate. But like we saw Jimmy G do the same thing, man. I know it wasn't to the same level, but he didn't have Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and all these guys healthy. But we saw Nick
Mullins. Nick Mullins is still in the NFL because he averaged 9 yards per attempt in this system. It was a worse version of this system, but you know, everyone that plays here is turning into something. Like I remember when in 2016 when they finally got some pieces around Matt Ryan again, and Shanahan was in his second year there. They blew the door down off of almost every single team they played until, you know, the one game when they hit a rut in the second half and they had a bunch of mistakes and they ended up losing the Super Bowl. But, you know, like there hasn't been a quarterback that's like actually failed in this system.
No.
Which like,
except for Trey Lance.
Make you think, except for Trey Lance.
He didn't get a chance though. Let's be serious.
Yeah, because he broke his leg, which is also another thing that people seem to forget happened to him like after the season. Like,
yeah,
you know, like, oh, Trey Lance sucks. Like, and yeah, he probably does suck, but he did break his leg when he was about to get a chance to actually play. So,
and if you look at his stats, like they're like actually really good, just because he played like the Texans and it was Shanahan doing Shanahan things. But his stats were actually good in the games he played. Like, people are going to look back at what happened there and not know any of the context and be like, why did he like just stop playing? Because he was like averaging like 0.25 EPA per player. So it probably wasn't that high, but it was like above average. So he was playing well. It's just like he's not the quarterback that fits in the system.
Yeah. Are you still getting flack over the Brock Purdy stuff, or people stop caring?
Nah, like I still get some deranged fans that will just like I'll tweet about like a Pizza Hut commercial and they'll be like, Brock Purdy. That's all they'll say. But no, it died down after the 3-game stretch when he was bad. Which I don't even think he was that bad, honestly.
I don't even think he was that bad, honestly.
I wasn't victory lapping that at all on Twitter, if you look back. And he actually went up in the rankings after those games. The only victory lapping I did was like the Peter King tweets, which
you have to.
I have to do that, man.
You have to victory lap Peter King because that stuff is weird. Do people ask me, what do you think about where Steven has Brock Purdy? Dude, I don't
Why would you care?
Why would I care about that?
If you had quarterback rankings, I wouldn't care either. Like, I don't care about anybody's quarterback rankings.
Yeah, no one's asking me about like the NFL.com QB index. I don't care about that either. Like, man, I got bills. I got problems. I don't give where Brock Purdy's ranked. All right, last quarterback before we get out.
He's got a wasp in his apartment.
I've got a giant wasp in my apartment, and the high today is 36 degrees. I have issues, man. Okay. Why is well? I guess before, like, where was Sam Howell on the last iteration of the quarterback rankings?
Let me scroll. I think he's 27th, but that doesn't count. Like he's probably like 24th, 23rd in actual NFL quarterbacks. If you take out all the bits.
That sounds about right to me. I mean, I don't really understand. Like, I'm not really that high on Sam Howell. I think here's how I feel about Sam Howell. For a 5th round pick, that's a great pickup, honestly. Yeah. For a 5th rounder, like, elite use of one. I don't think he should be like their starting quarterback moving forward. No. Maybe like you get some competition for him next year. He's got some traits, but I don't know. This just feels like having Baker Mayfield as your quarterback in a super pass heavy offense.
I mean, that's what he's Baker Mayfield. Like, there's no other analysis needed. All the analysis we did on Baker Mayfield's time in Cleveland, like, apply that to, he's the same exact quarterback. And when you watch him play, they look the same. And I think the problem with those quarterbacks is they do have like strong arms. And if you have a strong arm, like, every once in a while, you're going to hit on these plays that look like a Patrick Mahomes type play. And they are willing scramblers. So they're going to scramble. The problem is like the negative side of those plays. Like, all the outtakes you have to get through to get the perfect shot. Like, Patrick Mahomes doesn't need a bunch of outtakes to get the perfect shot. Sam Howell needs to scramble a bunch of times to get hit 50 times before he can actually break through the pocket and go on a good scramble. He needs to throw like 3 terrible passes before he can finally hit like one of those like impressive balls down the field. And I think that's the problem, is just consistency and being able to do that play after play after play. I would take a Brock Purdy over him, even though he's clearly less talented and I think his ceiling is way lower. I would take Brock Purdy over him because Brock Purdy doesn't do all those like bad plays. You don't have to suffer through those to get the good stuff with Brock Purdy or a quarterback like that. So I don't know. I usually tend to prefer the quarterbacks with the traits, but not the ones who play like they have better traits than they do, because I think that gets you into more trouble.
Yeah. When are you going to knock Derek Carr down to the ranks of 20? Like, I see you have him 17 on last week's. What the hell?
He's going down. I watched Derek Carr and it's like the same criticisms I've always had of him. Like, oh my God, like, try to win a game. Like, can you at least like stop trying to get the best passer rating possible? But the thing that's so frustrating with him, and I think the reason why he's kind of overrated in rankings based on skill set, is he is very talented. And that's the one thing that is obvious when you watch him play. Like, he'll make a couple throws every game where you're like, just do that more. Like, there's a reason Devontae Adams compared him to Aaron Rodgers. And it's not just because
he's skilled.
It's talented. Not just because they were friends in college. And the reason why I think you hear those comparisons in training camp is because he's wearing that red jersey. And when he's wearing that red jersey, I bet he feels invincible. He's probably the best quarterback ever when he puts on that red jersey, when he knows he can't get hit. But you put getting hit into the equation, and then he turns into a quarterback that should probably be ranked in like the bottom 10 of these rankings.
Derek, just come on, man. You know, I don't really know how to phrase it.
That was a Freudian slip, though, calling him Jared.
Yeah, because that's about the same problem that Jared Goff has been running into lately, especially in that Bears game when Penei Sewell had a bad game. He was out. And you always know like where a quarterback's confidence is trending during a game when they break out that 2-minute drill to beat Chicago and they are just running it down their throats, like in a 2-minute drill.
That's how they do it. That's how Detroit does it too, man.
So yeah, just dock Derek Carr, put him underneath Desmond Ridder for me, and I think we'll be all good.
That's coming. Ridder played well on Sunday.
He did, dude. He's getting better. I just don't know if he's gotten better enough to lock this in for next year. That's the problem. But that's my problem for another day. Steven, Appreciate it. Tell people what you got coming up down the pipe that you want them to look out for.
I was going to say check out the quarterback rankings, but I've made this joke a couple times on a couple pods. Don't check out the quarterback rankings. Don't tell me your opinion on them. Don't tweet at me about them. Don't look at them. Listen to the Ringer NFL pod. All right, that's all I got.
Well, see, the problem is there's like two things that people search, or maybe actually no. There's four things that people will search during the course of a football season: fantasy football rankings, power rankings, quarterback rankings, mock drafts. And you have fallen on one of the swords of NFL content fandom. So
it's my fault. It's my fault. I can't blame anybody but myself, man. I'm writing about Tim Boyle today.
Wow. You should just leave that section blank. You just say, I'm putting as much effort into the Jets quarterback write-up as the Jets are putting into the quarterback position themselves.
I'm actually going to do that. That's a good idea. Thanks.
All right, so that's going to do it for this episode of the Exempt List. Send us a voicemail. Me and Jason Fitz. We check out speakpipe.com/0blitz. Ask me a question, hottest take. Call me or Steven stupid. We listen and reply to them on the show. We'll be back with another episode of the Exempt List next week, like we are every Tuesday. Tune in tomorrow for an episode of Inside Coverage with Jason Fitz, Charles Robinson, and Jory Epstein as they go behind the scenes on Frank Reich getting fired after 11 measly games in Carolina. One win, which happened to be over CJ Stroud and the Texans. Weird enough. I am Charles McDonald. You can find me on Twitter at @4verts. You can find Stephen Ruiz on Twitter at the Stephen Ruiz. Our producer, Stone Rochelle, is behind the glass at SJ Rochelle. And we will see you next week.